Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of us taking a look at some of the players who are returning to Norwich City this summer, having been out on loan and done well, not so well. We'll find out. And today is all about Jonathan Tomkinson. Of course, he's been on loan at Bradford City. It's going to be interesting to catch up with Nathan Atkinson about his progress and how he's got on. So, Nathan, I guess first and foremost, how has he got on? That's probably the opening question to ask.
He's gone all right in the end, Connor. He had us, obviously, I work for the Telegraph Argus. We cover every Bradford City game, home and away. And he had a slow start. I don't know whether Mark Hughes really fancied him when he first came in. He was famously, I think, had about 5 minutes under Mark Hughes in the EFL Trophy. That was kind of it. And you're like, it's going to be a bit of a disaster loan for both Norwich and for City, and for the Bantam, sorry. But he really Graham Alexander sort of changed formation around mid-November. Graham Alexander came in to replace Mark Hughes. Graham Alexander changed formation around mid-November. And that really opened the door for Tomkinson to play sort of on the right of a back three. And he was regularly in the team from sort of that period onwards. So it was a tough year for some of City's loanees. It didn't really work out. But John, I would say, did. And I think he was a pretty popular figure, as was his dad, actually, who came to visit among the Bantams fans. So, yeah, I think it ended up, after a slow start, being quite a successful loan for Jonathan, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I did a chat a couple of days ago with someone who covers Portsmouth, and it was sort of similar with Abu Kamara. Obviously, had a very good season on loan at Portsmouth and won the title there. But there was almost a slow start there, and he had a moment in sort of October where there was a little bit of fan pressure being put on his shoulders, and John Mousinho actually came out and defended him. So it is quite interesting how maybe a change of manager, a defence from a manager, these type of things can spark a loan spell into life, which seems to be what you've mapped out there for him.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was definitely it. Obviously, it just wasn't working for John initially. Well, sorry, the formation. It wasn't for John at City, but also the formation just, luckily for him, the formation wasn't working for City. Like, it all sort of changed, actually. Simon Parker covers more so against the team, but I've seen John a few times, and really it all changed with a game that I went to in mid-November. So they played Notts County on Sky Sports at Meadow Lane, and they played a 4-4-2 in the first half, and they were absolutely awful. They were 4-0 down at half-time. Graham decided to completely rip up that formation, play sort of 3-5-2 with attacking wing-backs. And they came back and lost 4-2, but were battered Notts County in the second half. And really stuck from there. And I've just taken a little refresh there now. So John hadn't even been in the squad since Mark Hughes' last game at the start of October. But after the Notts County game, Graham brought him onto the bench for the next 2 games. And then he, against Accrington and Forest Green. And then he got his chance against Gillingham, which came on December the 16th. And he played full 90 minutes, kept a clean sheet. And from there, he was pretty much a regular fixture in the team. I think from that game up until mid-March, he started all but 1 games for City. And he went on to play sort of 23 times, which kind of gave a good indication of his talents. Obviously played half the games in League Two. And like I said, November to March, he was a regular starter.
What has been the view of? It's interesting to see you describe him as a popular figure. What's been the view amongst fans about Jonathan Tomkinson? Has he been one that they've really liked? Has he been one that's sort of built up over a period of time? As you speak
I think
about?
he built up. I think a lot of people felt a bit sorry for him with the way. Obviously, Mark Hughes had his reasons, but I think people felt a bit sorry for him. Obviously, he was sent by Norwich to get games, and he wasn't getting them. But he never really moaned and never kicked up a fuss, and he just bided his time. I think that is something that made him popular. Like, he waited for his chance, and he really took it when he came in. And he was a big part of City's sort of much better second half of the season. And like I said, I think as well, his dad came up from America for a while. I think that really helped, that because his dad got very involved with the sort of Bradford City fans on Twitter and would go to all the games and was quite excited to sort of hear about what the City fans thought of his son. And he really engaged with it, and I think that really helped. Little things like that, I think, just a nice extra touch. So yeah, and I think as well, he was quite exciting as a bit of a more modern centre half. Obviously, he's a ball playing centre half, and I think that was quite exciting to see. I covered a game at Accrington in March, and remember him setting up the first goal, and it was sort of a long ball, but it wasn't like a hoof. It was Fabian Schär, I think, is really good in the Premier League. Sort of diagonal, sort of direct, but right onto the strikers, like laser-like. And that was what he did for the first goal. So he's got that in his locker as well. So on the right of a back three. Not just the fact that he's sort of a pacey defender as well. Like he can right centre half. You don't think of that as being an attacking outlet, but actually he was capable of doing that when he was when City were attacking as well.
It's interesting that you kind of speak about a back three, and I mean, did you see much of him in a two? Do you feel he could step into a two, or are we looking at somebody who, again, because sometimes with defenders you can pinpoint, well, they're a little bit better in a three, you know?
Is he one that you feel could step into? Yeah, it seems like that's what suits him best. We didn't really see much of any of him in a two. I think with his style, like obviously when you play a back three, you're right and your right and left centre halves tend to be able to do a bit more on attack when you got a back three. So I feel like that is what suits him best. It's where we saw him at his best. And obviously, it'll be interesting. I know you guys have got a new manager in Johannes Thorpe, and I think that'll be interesting, obviously. I guess it remains to be seen kind of what he will do with his own Norwich team. But I would say that Tomkinson's probably got more of a chance of being a regular for Norwich next season if he's playing in a 3-5-2, 5-3-2, whatever you want to call it, I would suggest. I guess it's going to depend whether the manager fancies him, but I think he could. But yeah, like I said, I'd imagine it would be as part of back three.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, and I'm sure you know it as well, and I've seen it at Bradford, loans are opportunities for players, particularly when they're maybe stepping down from a higher level, and it's to experience things maybe that they haven't experienced elsewhere. And you think about, and you mentioned it there, the challenge that he's got at Norwich this summer, that ability that maybe he gained at Bradford this season to bide his time, wait for that opportunity, but then have the ability to take it. That's going to be so valuable as he steps back to Norwich in pre-season if he can replicate that. But also the fact that he's kind of got experience of how to do it previously rather than going in cold and, not getting frustrated if that opportunity doesn't come immediately.
Well, that's it. And like I said to you, we saw he came in out the cold after not playing for months and then kept a clean sheet against a decent Gillingham team sort of straight away. So not only did he bide his time, but he, like you said, he was sort of ready for his chance when it came. It wasn't like he needed games to sort of get up to speed. Like he was straight in there, putting in a real shift and a really good performance. And John will know the sort of the rank in the area. Like he knows that he's probably not going to just walk straight into Norwich team immediately, unless he obviously really, really impresses in pre-season or in sort of training. But we've seen that he was willing to sort of bide his time last year in League Two, so I'm sure he'd have no problem with that in the Championship as well. And like I said, the fact that he was able to sort of slot in straight away and make his mark, I think bodes well if he is needed, say, at short notice or out of nowhere, he gets his chance to start a game.
How did he deal? Because I know he's obviously latterly in the season been sort of involved in qualification games and preparation for the Olympics, which is obviously coming up this summer, and he's going to be in part of American squad. How did he deal with that, going from obviously time zone differences and different type of competitions? Was that a challenge, a hurdle for him later on in the season?
Well, it probably was, and you'll see. I mean, it was partly, and like I said, John obviously, like any defender, especially any young defender, will put the odd foot wrong. And obviously, after a very sort of strong spell, it was a bit of a sticky period. Obviously, in that mid-March, they played Mansfield at home. And obviously, Mansfield went up, brilliant attacking team, and they hammered Bradford City 5-1 at Valley Parade. And John sort of didn't play a couple of games after that. And after that, he wasn't really a regular starter anymore. I don't think he was scapegoated, but it was just a natural, we need to look at changing something. And like you said, combine that with the fact that he certainly wasn't distracted. I thought John dealt with it really well. And he was clearly excited to play for America, but also excited to come back and play for Bradford City as well. But obviously that naturally was a bit of a disruptor. It's obviously unusual at that level for players to be getting international call-ups. So it was a challenge for him, obviously. And obviously we saw that it meant that his end of the season maybe wasn't as strong as it was sort of in that November to March period. But I think you can have factors like that as well. It was an unusual thing for him to deal with, because like I said, it's not really a common thing. Players go for national duty that are playing in League Two, but they did a decent job, and I think that could be key for Norwich if we see him have sort of a good Olympics. I think that that could benefit Norwich. Because obviously, like I said, we say, don't we, about players not getting rest when they've played in national tournaments, but also it's game time, and it's sort of competitive game time. So while Norwich are just playing pre-season games and John is playing at the Olympic Games, and obviously in America, the Olympics is football's a big thing, really. So I think it would. It's not that it wouldn't mean something for, say, a British team to win a medal at the Olympics in football, but I think for America it probably would mean a bit more because they're probably not going to win a World Cup like sort of England have the chance to. So I think it could be really beneficial for Norwich for John to have that time with America, and that's obviously it's an exciting thing for him to have that outlet that he's got. It's another reason why it could push him on at Norwich. He knows that he's got, because he'll want to stake his claim for sort of the unders team, but also in the long term, I'm sure he'd want to sort of have a chance of making the senior team for America. So that's all the more reason for him to sort of want to push on at Norwich as well.
Yeah, and just final two. I mean, firstly, Graham Alexander, you mentioned him there, but Jonathan Tomkinson, clearly a player that he liked. What was he kind of saying publicly about him and his abilities? Like, or was it more the fact that he was picking him was kind of enough of how much he sort of rated him during that period?
Well, I think a lot of it was picking him. I think there was maybe at times a bit of a criticism of Mark Hughes before that he would kind of go with the sort of tried and tested, if you like, that blue chip brigade. And obviously, John was a young lad coming on loan, and it's like, was that why he wasn't favoured? Because Hughes would sort of rather trust someone that was more experienced. He had people like sort of Ash Taylor, Matty Platt, Sam Stubbs, all centre halves that have got far more experience. But like you said, he did say so. I mean, obviously, I spoke to him after that. I couldn't get that mention where he set up that first goal. And I know the Pinkin republished my quotes, and quite rightly, because he really sort of taught him up. He said John's got massive potential. He's been in our team regularly now for a few months. He said JT's still learning the game. He's really open to learning about it. And he said whatever we challenge him with or talk to him about, he takes it on board. And the last quote particularly was quite striking. He said, as an athletic centre-back, there's none better than him. I mean, that is high praise for a young lad really getting his first scene. I think, like, saying he's essentially one of the most athletic centre-backs about. And yeah, like I said, I deliberately asked about him after the Accrington game because I thought he delivered a particularly stellar performance. Like, he was very good defensively that day, kept a clean sheet, and like I said, he set up that first goal. And yeah, like I said, Graham sort of not only praised him, but really highly praised him. So that last quote in particular is very strong words. And sort of saying now Norwich have got a sort of real player on their hands potentially if he is given the right environment to develop in 24-25.
Yeah, and that's kind of my final question, because this does feel like a big summer for him. As you say, he's just come back off what was a pretty successful second half of the season. He's now 22. He's going to be in a case now where he wants to play regularly, isn't he? He's not going to want to come into an environment where he's going to be warming the bench or not going to be getting minutes. This does feel like a really big summer for him and his career at the age that he's at. I say that like he's really old. He's just turned 22. But in footballing terms, it's an important time for him.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's the thing. It'll just be interesting to see how. I did want to bring up the slightly cautionary tale of Romany Critchlow, who sort of was in the year before at centre-half, a young centre-half on loan at City, and did a really good job. He was very popular as well. And he sort of got his chance with Peterborough's first team last season, but did find that step up a little bit harder. And I know certainly he wasn't popular on the Peterborough fans, but the praise he was getting from the Bradford City fans in 2015 wasn't really replicated in 23-24 with Peterborough, and it was handling that step up. I'm not saying it. There's no reason why John will follow exactly the same path, but it's just that cautionary tale. Like, League Two is a hard league. There's no dispute in that. It's a hard one to get out of, and there's lots of good games and there's a lot of talent in there. But there's no doubt it's a big step up in class to the Championship. So I'd like to think he could handle it, and I think he showed really good signs last year. But that's just the cautionary tale. Like, just because he had a pretty successful time in League Two and with the US Olympic team doesn't mean to say it will definitely be replicated in the Championship. I would love to see that. And I think he's got potential. Like you said, he's still only young. But I think it's one where I think Johannes will need to take a really good look at him and see what he's capable of, because it's a big ask to sort of throw a lad whose main first team experience has come in League Two straight into a Championship starting 11, especially when Norwich, obviously, I know, got the playoff semi-finals last year. It's not like Norwich are a team sort of floating about the Championship and just happy to be there. It's a team that will want to be challenging to get up to the Premier League. And so it's a big leap for John. I think he's a very capable player. But I think Norwich will really need to sort of run that rule over him, see whether they feel he's ready for that yet. And obviously, I would imagine that Johannes wouldn't rule out potentially another loan for him. Maybe in League One this time to potentially sort of see him at a slightly higher level than League Two. But we'll see. I'd love to see him get his chance at Norwich. He's a good young talent. But yeah, I think there'll need to be a real assessment of him over the summer in the early part of the season to see what's best for him, and whether that is sort of a place in the Norwich first team squad and around the first team, or whether it is another loan out somewhere. But yeah, I agree with Graham Alexander. I think you've got a really talented player on your hands. It's just whether he's sort of ready this early or not, I guess.
Lovely stuff. Nathan, thank you very much for your time and your insight. I really appreciate it. I'm sure Norwich fans have as well. I know you mentioned it at the beginning, but just tell us where people can find you if they want some more Bradford City content.
Yeah, so Sam Parker and I are the sort of work for the Telegraph and Argus. He's the main Bradford City sports reporter. He's away at the moment, so I'm sort of his second in command. I mainly cover the Bradford Bulls, but I do cover plenty of Bradford City stuff as well, and that's obviously what I'm doing right now. And like I said, I've obviously got to see Jonathan Tomkinson a few times at close quarters last season. So yeah, you can find us both on the Telegraph and Argus. He's at Parker TNA and I'm at Nathan A _ TNA. And yeah, obviously we deliver all the Bradford City news. And obviously we're hopeful that some of the 24-25 loanees have the impact that John did, because I think there were a few that sort of fell flat last year, but I don't think we wouldn't put John in that category at all. I think he showed a lot of really good signs at Bradford City last season, and hopefully that does bode really well for Norwich going forward.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks, Nathan. And thank you all very much for watching. And the final instalment of this series, we'll be talking about Norwich City's duo who have been at Accrington, namely Brad Hills, but also a bit on Lewis Shipley as well. So we'll see you then.